Welcome to another video, A Walk with Phil, and I'm in West Bromwich. And today what I thought to do is take you along Hallam Street. And the reason I'm going to take you down Hallam Street is because I discovered something fairly recently which I didn't even know was there. So I'll take you down Hallam Street and I'll show you what it is. So I'm standing here on, well, where we got 1, 2, 3, 4 roads all kind of converging on one another here, because we've got Sager Street just ahead of me. Woodward Street is just down there, and just down here we've got St Clement's Lane, and here we got Taylor's Lane. Taylor's Lane was famous for a couple of things along here. J.J. Grant's The Bakers was just around about there, and prior to that there was a pub called there, the Plough and Harrow, which was used by the West Bromwich Albion Football Club as their changing room when they used to play at Stony Lane, which again is just sort of over there at the back of Taylor's Lane. St Clement's Lane was not its original name. Prior to being St Clement's Lane, it used to be called Workhouse Lane, because there was a workhouse along Hallam Street, and before it became Hallam Hospital it was called the West Bromwich Union Workhouse. I'll show you that in a bit. And just here we've got the Gospel Blue Ribbon Mission. It's a kind of a mission hall that's been there since 1892. As I said earlier, there's something down Hallam Street which I didn't even know was there. Amazing, really. The amount of times I've gone past this particular spot. In my youth I'd be going to Church School, and obviously I would have passed it then. Strange, not even remembered it, but strangely I never even noticed it. Just here where all these bungalows are, there used to be a Sunday school. All this top end of Hallam Street here has all got lots of the old terrace properties from the early 1900s. The road there to my right is Slathwaite Road. Just show you Slathwaite Road. I mean, look at that for a tree-lined road. Our view is going to be very obstructed along here because there's parking on both sides of Hallam Street. Yeah, you can see all the old terrace properties along this stretch. And we've just got another road here to my left called Cottrell Street. Just show you down Cottrell Street. Cottrell Street leads on to Sheridan Street, just in the distance, and the road that cuts through it is Stony Lane. Hallam Street is a rather busy street. Generally I think it's to do with the hospital. A lot of these flat roof maisonette type house properties along here and to my left. Hallam Street really hasn't changed much since I used to come up and down here back in the 70s. Still looks largely the same. I dare say it's probably got busier. There's Cranbourne Place. I bet you've never been up Cranbourne Place. So I thought, well, let's go and have a look, shall we? Pretty pothole little service road here. Yeah, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4 properties. You carry on down Hallam Street, you get down to the bottom, you will come to Parsonage Street, and that will lead you on to All Saints Way, which will then you can go right and it goes into Newton Road. There's Kinneth's Way just down there. Another tree-lined road. Nearly all the roads that lead onto Dagger Lane, which would be at the end of this road, were all tree-lined. It seems a very sedate prosperous areas around Dagger Lane and the roads that lead off it. A Methodist chapel here, which was dated 1883, so it's been here a while now. This stone was laid by a Mrs. Israel Parks. Edward Cox laid this one in 1883. And there's another stone there. This stone was laid by Mrs. Joseph Hamlet of Maidstone, Kent. Would that be Mrs. or Mr.? It's got Mrs. on the stone. Anyway, we got Sandwell General Hospital here. Just up Lewisham Street, there is an entrance. And this is a very busy area just here. This is the old part of Hallam Hospital, just there. The entrance here is the rehabilitation centre, but just there, the old part here, was the part of the old workhouse, still standing. And back in 1884, the poor had to work for accommodation, and this is why the workhouse was here. In 1884, this particular part of Hallam Hospital was built, and it was called West Bromwich Union Workhouse. An infirmary was added in 1925, and that was when it became known as Hallam Hospital. But all this is all the old part of the hospital, and this in particular is the old workhouse. All these old railings here. You don't see many places with railings because during the war, the Second World War, a lot of them were removed for the war effort. Not sure what used to be here before all these new apartments were built. That's the only major thing that's changed along Hallam Street since the days when I used to walk along here. Back in the day, right in the 1920s, when a lot of the terraced housing didn't really have any gardens, just had yards, they would have to use allotments to grow food. And all this area in the 1920s onwards, right up into the Second World War, maybe after then, I don't know, but these were all allotments. Quite a large area, probably the largest allotment area in the Black Country, I'd imagine, because it was not only just here, it was also ahead beyond those trees there, just ahead of me. And of course, we got here is the Hallam Hospital as it was. It's now the Sandwell General Hospital. In the 1970s, it was renamed. And of course, all this is the old part. Here's one of the entrances for the staff. And we've got I'm thinking this is a car park for Hallam Hospital staff. Yeah, some more old parts of the hospital, as you can see all over here. Look, see how old these are. I mean, they're dating from 1884, but it looks very old, doesn't it? It's like a big church. I've never really looked at it closely. You can see all these very old iron railings all along the frontage of the hospital, all along Hallam Street. There's a blue plaque there. I usually go and have a look at blue plaques. We'll go and cross over and have a look. Looks like this is the antenatal clinic. Yeah, the blue plaque reads The West Bromwich Union Workhouse, boardroom of the Guardians of the Poor, 1857 to 1930. So, there's another staff car park for the hospital. As you can see, this is the newer part of the hospital that was built from the 1970s onwards when it got rebuilt. The newer part is called the Education Centre. Yeah, as I said earlier, these are all allotment gardens were all along here. Loads of them. You can see how huge this place is. Hospitals seem to be getting bigger and bigger. Even though a lot of the rebuilding took place in the 70s for this hospital, many have said now it does feel rather dated inside. One of these multi-storey car parks just there for visiting. Yeah, and it was all still to my right. We got allotment gardens. Extraordinary amount of cars on this staff car park. Must be thousands that work in that hospital. Just on the left we got Little Lane. We're going to have a look up Little Lane, see what's going on up there these days. This was the entrance to the accident and emergency department here at Sandwell General, and it's sad to report that it is now closed down. £18 million was spent on this new department in 2005, because in 2005 there was a fire, one of the largest fires ever seen on an NHS hospital. So we no longer have an accident and emergency department, so you'll see very few ambulances here now. It closed just about 4 weeks ago. We're talking about, it's October now, so about 4 weeks ago this particular part was closed, the accident and emergency. £18 million though, eh? Now anybody now who's got an emergency has to go to the nearest hospital, which is the new one that's open in Grove Lane in Smethwick, and he's got a fancy name of Midland Metropolitan University Hospital. Just want to show you something else down Little Lane. There's quite an unusual pub that was down here. It was called the Church Vale Tavern. It's gone now. Been pulled down a while now. Yeah, just where these new properties are now. This was the site of the old Church Vale Tavern, and it was originally built in 1858. I think it got a bit of a rebuild over the years, but it was finally demolished in 2013. By all accounts, it had a bowling green as well, and it also had this strange chimney at the front. Rather an unusual little pub, but sadly, after well over 100 years, it got pulled down. And we've got some new houses in its place. It's a very old lane, Little Lane. The thing about lanes are generally rural. So when you see the word lane, it tends to belong to a time when the area was rural, agricultural, farmland, and Dagger Lane not so far away, all quite rural areas. The roads tend to be connecting roads between places and towns, such as Albury Road, Birmingham Road, that kind of thing. And streets in general are named after people, places, generally people. Avenues have always tended to be tree lined, but I've seen many roads now called avenues and they ain't got no trees. Little lane. Never used to be a sealed off road. It used to join 10 Score Street at the bottom. That was a long time ago. There's still the old part of Hallam Street. These are actually called Eldon buildings and they were built in 1895. This stretch of terraced houses, 1895 these were. So they're getting on a bit. Just here was a park and it was called Cheshire Park. And when we talk about parks in West Bromwich in particular, they're all quite large areas, but this one is less than half an acre. It's not really a park anymore, as you can see. But in 1899, it was opened in January 1899 by local councillors, dignitaries. The mayor at the time was a councillor called S. Pitt, and he declared that this park is open to the public forever. And it was enclosed by trees. Just here was enclosed by trees on both sides. Where that van has just decided to park, there was the entrance to this park, to Cheshire Park. Councillor Cheshire and Mr. Councillor Keys proposed this small park because this was an ever expanding area of West Bromwich, and they thought this would befit the local people of this expanding area where they would come and sit, where Keys was donating seating areas, and Councillor Cheshire was giving the fountain to the park. Now the fountain stood around about here. It was a replica, a smaller replica of the Farley fountain, and it stood around just about here somewhere. And but what was unusual about this fountain was there was a football on the top of it, a small football, imitation football, and it had on that football it showed you the dates of when West Bromwich Albion won the FA Cup, which would have been 1888 and in 1892. But you can imagine there was a fair few dignitaries around here on that day in January of 1899, all attending this place, and it was Councillor Cheshire who turned on the fountain, and all the children rushed to it, eager to taste the water from the fountain. So we'll just have a walk along it, try to ignore the van. Well, I'm not sure when all the seating area was taken. Nobody knows what happened to the fountain, or indeed the football that was on top of it. But he declared it a park open to the public forever. Well, it's still here, but nowhere to sit, no fountain to drink from. It had various names after it was named the Cheshire Park. For a time it was called the Church Vale Recreation Ground, and then it was actually even called the West Bromwich Park. But it's a park no more. There you go. I'm not sure if you found that interesting, but I bet you didn't know this was a major park of West Bromwich. Even I didn't know until fairly recently. There's a phone box here. Not sure if it's always worth having a look opening the door and see if they still work. So look, it's still working. It's still working. Minimum amount to put in now is 60 pence, if you didn't know. Used to be 2p, I think, when I used to use public phone boxes. Dagger Lane is down the bottom. Here's Church Vale. And just show you the sides of what was originally called Cheshire Park. I don't know whether that surprised you, that there was an actual park just here on the junction of Church Vale and Hallam Street, but it's no longer a park. I think it's just somewhere now where people can take their dogs for a walk now. Sadly, it's no more as a park. I'd love to have seen a fountain there in this park, but anyway, there you go. There's our little walk along Hallam Street, and we'll leave it at that. And if you like the video, hit the like button and also hit subscribe and hit the notification bell for new videos, and I'll see you on the next one.